Hi, I'm Landon Whitsitt. Welcome back to Theo Academy's series on preparation for ordered ministry. In our last 3 lessons, we have learned what worship is and about the different movements of worship. We have discovered that the presence of Christ and the witness of the Scriptures order and orchestrate every aspect of our worship. And we have taken some time to sit with the mystery of the sacraments. The question, it seems, that we're left with is, how do we worship? How do we understand this regular get-together? Worship is often one of the first ways a person gets to know our communities of faith. And for many congregations, worship is still the primary place where faith is formed. Yes, the proclamation of the word goes a long way to introducing the faith to folks. And the sacraments give us significant ways to live into God's grace. But for most people, it is the music and the prayers of a community that really bring home what the Christian life is all about. Our Episcopal friends have a wonderful phrase. If you want to know what we believe, watch how we pray. The ways we worship, they say, tell us everything we need to know about their faith, because we're not going to do it if we don't believe it. So how do we use the music and prayers of worship to bring people into this faith of ours?
What if worship was thought of as a party? And so I go to a party and I don't know any of the people. Some friend invited me to the party. And I'm a little uncomfortable. I don't really know these people. I don't know what jokes I can tell that they'll laugh at. I don't know if I burst into song, they'll think I'm silly. I don't know anything about these people. And so I kind of sit on the sidelines, and I just, people are hospitable to me. They show me where the food is. They introduce me to new people, and I can enjoy that. But I'm not going to enter into the whole host of what the party is about. But as I keep meeting these people, as I begin to trust these people, as I begin to know who they are, what their values are, and I begin to sense my resonance with who they are and what their values are, and I begin to learn from them, and I begin to teach them, then I begin to get more comfortable, and I begin to, in that kind of context of trust, I begin to be able to enter in and participate in ways that I never could have on that first day I came in. So at that point, if we go back to the church, I might begin to start singing. I might know those songs a little better now, and I might begin to know how the words of those songs really help me to identify my own faith, to express my own faith, how I can see these songs as acts of prayer and as acts of community building. And I can begin to see that I'm singing with all these people around me, and we don't really care whether we're singing good or bad. We're singing out with our passion and our energy, and I trust them because I know them and I've been with them. So it might be a process that takes a while. And in that process, I'm going to learn some of that music, and I'm going to become more familiar with where the music comes, and so I don't feel shy about singing, thinking that I'll come in at the wrong time or make a mistake. So it takes a while. It's a learning, growing, trusting experience. But I think once we arrive at that point, then music becomes a great shared bond that we have together. One of the things we do in worship is we sing. And it's an interesting idea, because singing together as a community is not something that is that prevalent in our society. It's not unknown. I think I was at the Boston Red Sox game last year, and we all sang Sweet Caroline after some inning. And it was a great experience, everybody just singing together, and I've been to a lot of rock concerts, and people these days sing all the words, and they sing out loud. And, we've all been to birthday parties where we sing Happy Birthday. And so it's not unknown to sing in other places, but generally on a week-to-week basis, the church is the best place to sing. And it is the place we can sing together. And the church has had a long, long tradition of singing together. I think that it's a rich tradition that the church has kept going in society a lot of times, this sort of community singing. And it, in the subject we were talking about earlier about how passive or active are we in our worship, the singing has always been a place where it is an active participation. I think to some extent, we've lost that a little bit with both rock bands playing for us in some of our churches, and then highly skilled choirs singing for us in other kind of high art churches. In both cases, the congregation has lost their voice a little bit.
Part of our responsibility as elders in the church is to help our congregations regain their faith voice, particularly in worship. Music is one way to do that, but it's not the only way. Another significant tool we have at our disposal is prayer. Some people like to say that prayer is the Christian's first job. As we've noted before, one of the marks of the early church is that in addition to the breaking of the bread, the fellowship, and the apostles' teaching, the people devoted themselves to prayer.
I think that fundamentally, prayer is, we think of prayer as something that we voice, something that we say. Prayer, to me, I think is much deeper than that. It's sort of the sitting with God. It's a relationship. I have this relationship I have with my wife, for example. We talk, we share, she talks to me, but we also just sit quietly together quite a bit. And someone will just say something, off the hand. But this sort of prayer is this relationship with God, where we are in God's presence and we speak to God and we listen to God. And sometimes we just sit quietly together. And to me, really, I think prayer is another word for worship. It is that being in God's presence in all different ways. I think, sometimes, and we come to this sort of having that real relationship with God. I think often we try to distance ourselves from God. Sometimes we do that by at least making the relationship safer or more, what should I say? For example, we often write prayers, and in the writing of those prayers, we read those prayers that we have written, and sometimes we feel like it's just enough to have read the prayer without ever resonating with the prayer or with ever deeply meaning the prayer or finding out some person of God probably wrote this prayer and they have a lot of feeling and experience which they've put into this prayer. So when we read it, it's not just we read this prayer because it's like a password to God. We read this prayer because it maybe could resonate in our life. And then in our conversation with God, which sometimes we feel like, wow, I don't know what to say, here are some words we could say to God, and they might resonate with us. Because it's not really the words that we're saying. It's the thoughts and feelings and emotions that we're communicating to God. It's these longings of our hearts. It's these joys of our experience. These are what we're trying to communicate with God. And we've found some words that somebody wrote, and they seem to do it for us. They seem to say that, and we're going to communicate that. But simply to say them as a password or a magic key to some experience is missing the point, I think. I've spent a lot of time in Taizé worship, and Taizé sing over and over again these similar sort of refrains. In God alone my soul shall find rest and peace. And it's a way of praying words which, in God alone my soul can find rest and peace. And in a Taizé service you might sing that 7, 8, 10 times over and over again, quietly, in a meditative sort of way. And as opposed to just sitting there quietly, which many of us have trouble with our minds wandering and that sort of thing, this sort of chanting of these words provides a focus for us. And we're singing these words, and at first, at least my experience with them, is that I sing those words. In God alone my soul shall find rest and peace. I begin to ponder what that means to me and how God's working. And then I can begin actually to respond to God in some way, and call out in my need. I need rest and peace in these ways. And then I might fall silent again and just begin to read those words. There's this sort of relational quality that the singing actually makes possible. And so it's just another technique of prayer, sort of like written down prayers. They aren't prayers necessarily in themselves. They're just helping us to pray, helping us to have this relationship with God.
All these prayers we pray and songs that we sing, they're just tools to help us connect with the God who has loved us, called us, and created us. It's important for us to remember that no one kind of prayer or song is going to work all the time. Those of us responsible for the worship life of a congregation must remember that the circumstances of life are going to change, and we must be prepared to address them. A tragedy might occur, or a great joy may present itself, and in both cases, the worship life of a congregation needs to be prepared to respond to that.
At various times and places in our worship, we might call on a God who is mysterious, and we come to God in awe and mystery, and cannot understand the depth and the richness and the bigness and the holiness of God. And in our church life as a community, in our life as a person, that might be the God who we need at that point. And yet other times we might need a God who comes to us, who stands with us in our weakness, who comes and embraces us in our pain, who is compassionate, who loves us and hears us and listens to us. That God is also here for us, and it's the same God. So all of this richness of God's image is a resource, if you want to think of it that way, for our worship. And if we only worship God in one way, we limit our God. Our God is too small, to use the word. But yet if our worship can come to God in a variety of ways, and can use a variety of cultures, a variety of musics, a variety of prayers, a variety of gestures in which we can express or understand our faith in these varieties of ways, it's only for our benefit in our growth and formation. I think the question of who our community is, when we here at the seminary talk to seminary grads about going to their first church, one of the things that we always tell them is spend a lot of time listening when you get there, because every church is different, and every church community has grown up with a different set of experiences, a personal history, a local history that's very important. And that local history is very important to a theology which has developed, to a way of worshiping that has developed, to the meanings that are associated to what's done in worship. Those things develop over time in experience and in relationships, and every church is different because of the people who have been there, the experiences that they've been through, the place that they've come from. And we were talking about class and social position, and every church comes out of a different milieu. And these days, one of our goals, I think, in many of our churches is to try to be a place of diversity, a place where we can welcome people from a variety of social locations, traditions, ethnic and religious traditions, ethnic groups and religious traditions.
So this is the tension. As we finish our consideration of the worship life of our congregations, we are left trying to figure out how to honor the history and traditions of a particular community and at the same time become diverse enough in our expression that all people can recognize and joyfully worship God. This is our task as elders, and it is an awesome one. However, as long as we ourselves are devoted to the joyful worship of God, to the hearing of the word, the sacraments, and to the prayers, God will carry us through. Peace be with you.